right, this is the secret life of organic groups, or as I originally was going to call this talk, organic groups from FML to OMG. I'm Wayne Eaker. I'm an independent Drupal developer, site builder, themer, jack of all trades. I maintain several modules on Drupal.org. I teach Drupal training classes at DrupalTutor.com and creator of Drupal X-Ray. You can find me on various services. And I'm crazy about organic groups. These days, it seems like, well, I used to think people came to me because they knew I was an organic groups expert and they wanted me to work on their project. But I think that it might be that people come to me with a project and I find some way to work organic groups into that project so that we have to use it. So what I'm going to show you today is some of the stuff that I've done. Some of the stuff is crazy and it's not what organic groups was designed to do, but that's why it's the secret life of organic groups. I will start with the normal use case first. So I'll just do a quick demo. How many people have used organic groups before? OK, so there's a decent number who haven't. So I will go through the normal use case first. And then I'll talk a little bit about how it works under the hood. And then I'll go through some progressively crazier use cases as we have time. And because it was specifically requested, I've also included cute animals in the presentation. All right, so let's start with the typical use case. So the typical use case for organic groups is groups of users sharing content. This might be discussions, articles, and that content is stored as nodes. Organic groups has a lot of features. If I can sort of summarize them up, you can take the permission level down to the group level. You can assign roles at the group level and then give users like admin roles. You can make up new roles at that group level. Membership into the group can be open or moderated. And those admins at the group level can then like manage posts, delete post, add new post. So posting content can be controlled by those permissions at the group level, and viewing content can be controlled at the group level as well. So I'm going to show you some of those features first. Now, I have pre-recorded all my demos, so some of them we'll probably have to skip through just for time purposes, but I will have a URL at the end of the presentation, so if you want to go back, I would not try to keep up there very fast, so I would not try to like take notes on the step-by-step, but I will talk through the step-by-step. OK, so if we're going to install organic groups, this is sort of a vanilla site. We're going to turn on organic groups. I did turn on organic groups context, but I don't think I actually use it in the video. And organic groups UI. Organic groups is separated, the user interface and the backend architecture, so that's why you need both modules. For some of the more obscure use cases that I'm going to show you, you could leave off the UI because you're probably going to have to make your own. Now I'm going to add a content type to be the group. And I'll set a few of the normal settings. The key one here is when I get to the bottom, you'll see there's a tab that says organic groups. So we're going to need to tell the system that we want this new content type group to behave like a group in the organic groups definition. And then the next step will be we need to tell the system that we want some other content types to behave as group content. So these are things that can be posted to a group. So we'll use the article content type. And since I only have the one type of group, I can just take the defaults there. And I can't remember. Oh, I think next I'm going to add a couple groups.
So are articles now always controlled by a group?
No, they're not always controlled. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on the permissions so that users can create their own groups. But I want you to note that users do not have the permission to create articles, because I don't want them just creating articles, like on the whole site. I am going to allow them to create articles within the context of a group, but we need to do that at a separate level. So here under the organic groups permissions, which is under configuration, there's a whole nother permission screen. And so here, is where I'm going to go in and say, at the group level, users are allowed to create articles. So they can create groups at the global level, and then once they're inside of a group context, they can create articles within a group. And there's a bunch of other permissions here. I'm not going to go through them all. They're pretty well explained if you look at them. But these are all the different permissions that you can set at the group level. Oh, I think that's the end of that one. So that's the setup. This site now has organic groups, and it's all ready to go. So here it is in action. So I have a couple users here. This is Jen. Jen's going to create a new group. Notice that she doesn't have the ability here. Actually, yeah, she doesn't have the ability here to create any articles because there is no groups yet. There's no way that she can do that in a group. So she's going to create this group. And now over here in this other browser, I'm going to log in as another user, Ben. Or no, sorry, Bob. And I'm going to request group membership. By default, organic groups is going to have moderated group membership so that the administrator of the group, the one who created it, or another one who has been assigned administrator, has to approve any joins to the group. So Bob's in a pending state now. If we come back over here to Jen, she can go under this new group tab here and manage the group. And she only sees that group tab because she's an administrator. And there's the pending request. So she can approve this in what must be one of the most abstract set of messages that you're ever going to see. Just read the UI messages that come up here. They're really helpful. OK, so now Bob is approved. So if we go back, Bob should be able to, I think Bob's going to post next in this. OK, so yeah, nothing changes here. But now when he tries to add content, he can add an article. And notice he'll have to pick which group to post it to. And if he actually tries to just post this article without picking a group, he'll get an error message because he does not have permission, global permission, to write articles for the website. So, but if he puts it in this group, then it'll work. All right, so the articles on the site does link back to the group page. Now, by default, there is no user interface for showing the post on the group. Organic groups kind of leaves that up to you to do something with. So you can use views, and then if you're using panels or just your theme to sort of design what a group page looks like, you can embed those. I think next video I have a quick and dirty way to do it, which is I'm going to take the built-in, there is a built-in view, OG content. I'm going to turn that view into a block and then put that block in the content region. That way we'll be able to see the post to a group. So for the most part, I think all I really need to do, I need to make it a block, and then there's one configure, I need to set a default contextual filter because it's a block and not a page or something else where it could pick it up easier. I think everything else can stay default. Oh, OK. I guess I got sleepy there. All right. So now we've got the block. I just need to assign the block to a region so that I can see it. All right, so I'm going to put it there in the content region. So it'll be just under the main page content. And because of the way that one's set up, it should only show up on group pages. So now if I go to group A, there is my post that I posted to the group. And OK, and Jen can see it as well. And the other. And if we create a second article, you'll see we'll get both of them listed there because that's how the default view is set up. So I'll go back to the group page, and now we can see sort of a list. OK, so this is like a blog or discussion post or whatever. All right, so that is the typical use case. All right, you can see it was pretty quick to set up. We got, I mean, that's kind of like discussion post. I think we had comments turned on, so it could work that way. So you could use this as a replacement for a forum, possibly a replacement for a mailing list. If you are going to do something like a mailing list, then you'll want to potentially use the message notify, and message digest modules. They allow you to kick out notifications. And actually, if you want notifications about new posts in a group, those would be ones that you might want to consider. Those are kind of complicated, so I'm not going to get into the details of those today. You could use this for an intranet or for a social network. And I have this C Drupal Commons. Drupal Commons is a distribution that it uses organic groups, and it's sort of a whole social network in a box, sort of all pre-configured for you. All right, so now that I've talked about the typical use case, let's look under the hood a little bit and see how does organic groups like store this information. So most people think of it like this, as, oh, there's a group, and there's a bunch of users who are the members or subscribers, and then there's like a bunch of content. But that's not really how it acts in the database. In the database, it's more like this. There is a node. In the typical use case, there is a node which acts as a group. That's at the top. And then there are a bunch of other entities that are connected to it. So an entity in the Drupal system, it's a lot of different things: a node, a user, a comment, kind of a file. So it's like sort of anything in the Drupal system. And so they're connected via a membership, which itself is an entity. So that's why I've drawn it with a dot there, because it's also an entity. And organic groups will actually allow you to connect any kinds of entities together. The typical use case and what works out of the box, if you use the organic groups UI module, is a node as the group, nodes as the content, and users as the subscribers. However, fundamentally, it can work with any entity types. So if you want to do something crazy, theoretically, this could work. You can have any entity type could be the group, so it could be a commerce order. You could have any entity type as the group content. So you could have commerce products, comments, entity forms. Anything can work there. Now, this would be crazy. Let me just be clear. If you do this, though, I want to see it, because I would like to know exactly why, and I would be in awe of it. It can actually get more complex, because those membership entities can have different types as well. So just like you have different node types and different content types, and you usually use different content types because you want to have different fields, or you're using them for a slightly different purpose, you can actually have different types of membership. So we saw there was that one field that I had to fill in when I joined the group that was the request message. The default membership has one field on it that's that request message. If you wanted to have a different form, you could either change the default or add more fields to the default or create different types of memberships.
Would that be through the member roles?
So there is a user interface for it. It's down in that set of organic groups. I don't have a thing on it, but I can show it at the end if we have time. You usually don't have to create additional membership types. You can usually just change the fields on the main one, but it's all through that same interface. All right, so let's look at some other use cases for organic groups. I think the simplest one, sort of the smallest leap from its typical use case, is learning management systems. Because all we really have to do is change terminology. Instead of talking about groups, those are classes. Instead of talking about a group admin or manager, that's the teacher. And then our group content, it could be discussion posts or articles, but it might be assignments or homework or lessons, other resources. And remember that we can set the permissions at the group level. So it's pretty simple to set it up so that the administrator can manage all the assignments, and maybe your members, who would be the students in this particular case, would only have the ability to do discussion, create discussion content. All right, and if you wanted them to do other, let's say, responses to assignments or things, if you had other content types, you could give them that permission. All right, so I mean, by default, it's going to look similar to what we had before. This is one that I did a few years ago. So you can, if you theme it up and really, push it to the max, you can make something fairly robust that using organic groups. Now, one feature of organic groups that's particularly good for learning management systems, but can be used for the regular groups as well, is private groups. And that actually comes out of the box with organic groups. So I'll show you real quick how you would set that up, because it only takes a couple minutes here. So there is another module called Organic Groups Access Control. Sorry, I had a lot of modules on this system. And once you get that installed, there's one more step we need to do, which is we need to add a field to the group type, content type, to control whether or not that group is public or private. So there is an OG field settings configuration, and this is really confusing, and I screw it up all the time. You have to select the group, the fields you want here, but then even though you highlight it down there, you have to go up here and make sure you pick the right bundle at the top. So what I just did there, I should back that up real quick, because that's actually a very confusing screen. So well, I don't know if I can see it now. But there's, at the top there, you have to select the group node type, and then in the fields, you have to select group visibility. And then at the bottom, you hit add field. And that's what gives you that adds the group visibility to the group node type. This down here is irrelevant. I mean, it shows you what's currently configured, but it's very confusing because it seems to be related to the form, but it's not. Okay, it just shows you the ones that are currently configured. All right, so now that I've added that field to the group node, there it is. And I can set this group to private. Once I've done that, I believe I can now stop ignoring that rebuild permissions message and let it go through that. And now this group is private. So let's see. OK, so if I go to another user and refresh a user who's not a member of this group, I get access denied. OK. A user who is a member will be able to see, yeah, here. So if I add that user who just got the access denied to the group, this is the admin interface for adding a user, just manually. Now if I go back and refresh, I should be able to see the group and the content that's with that group. OK, so pretty straightforward. And I think just in the rest of this video, I just clean up some of this field. Those fields are like normal, so you can go under content types, manage display, and hide them if you want. So that's the only piece that's left there, because usually you don't want that group visibility thing showing. All right, so we've done private groups. Now I want to talk about selling organic groups. So this is something that I figured out a couple years ago, because like I said, I do those DrupalTutor.com. I built DrupalTutor.com to do Drupal training. And so I use organic groups as my learning management system. Basically, people check out using Drupal Commerce. They buy a course. That triggers them being added to the course's organic group, which then, using the privacy settings, gives them access to the lessons. Now, I didn't use these modules that I'm going to show here because they didn't exist 2 years ago. But if I were going to do it again, I would totally use these modules in order to implement this functionality. So I'm going to show you. It's actually super easy. I really wish they had existed 2 years ago. So on this site, I've got this organic group already set up. We see it's got lessons in it. It's a private group, and it's set up. I've also got Drupal Commerce installed, just with the default options. So I'm going to turn on Commerce License and Commerce License OG. Those are the two modules that I'm going to need. I do have links at the URL at the end for all the modules. So. All right, and then once those are installed, I can go to the store and I can configure my license settings. So I have to set up one of my product types in the store to work as a license for a group. I'm just going to use the default product. If you're already selling real products, you'll probably need to create another product type and then use that for licensing. And then I also have to turn on and say that for this product, those specifically are designed to work with organic groups. So I just basically check those two boxes. And so now I need to create a product. So I need to create a product that when I buy it, puts me in that organic group that was listed there at the beginning. So these first fields are just the normal commerce fields. The only one that's new is down here, licensed group. And that's where I select the organic group that this is going to drop you into when you buy this. All right, and that I think is actually all the, I think that is all the config that's needed. Oh, no, sorry. So I need because I haven't set up a product display. So if you've used Drupal Commerce before, just adding a product doesn't give you any way to buy that product. You have to create a node type, a content type, to sell that product with. Now this isn't an organic groups thing. This is just a Drupal Commerce thing. So what I'm doing is I'm setting up a content type here that has a product reference. This will give me some place to then buy the product. So in this case, I called this node type a course listing. So you'll go to the course listing page, hit add to cart. That'll take you, go through checkout, and then you'll be added to the actual group. That's what we're going to get here in a second. So now I need to create that course listing. So I'll just put in some description text, why you want to take this course. I'll assign it to that product that we just created. And here's my course listing page. Okay, so I have a course listing page and an organic group page. They are two different ones. You might be able to use the same, but that would be a little tricky. So here is a user who isn't in the group. You notice they don't have organic. Oh, yeah, and by default in Drupal Commerce, nobody can check out. So you got to turn that on by OK, so notice that he doesn't have that organic groups link at the top, the organic groups 101, because he's not in the course and he can't see it because it's a private group. So he's going to buy this, puts it in his cart, and checks out normally. OK, now as soon as he checks out, let me pause it here. You can see that he's got access to that organic groups, and I can tell because it's up on the menu bar. So if he goes in there now, he'll have access both to the group and to the lesson content that's in there. So there you go, 4 minutes, and now you can create a competitor to DrupalTutor.com or Udemy or Coursera or whatever. What am I showing? Oh, and so there also is, it keeps track of these licenses. And so under the store, you can actually see the licenses that have been granted. In this case, Bob has one for Organic Groups 101. And these licenses, there is support for like renewals if you're selling some sort of SaaS product. I haven't done that before, so, but I do believe it has some sort of support for doing renewals. Oh, and when I was using, there's kind of a bug with this module, which is it doesn't work with anonymous checkouts. It doesn't properly put you in the group with anonymous checkouts. I figured out a rule to make it work. So it's written up there, and I have the export of it. If you go up and load the slides, or it's actually linked. It's linked at the URL. You can import that rule if you're actually going to do this. And then anonymous checkouts will work. So again, that was rather basic before, but I'm using the same technique. Even though I'm not using those modules, it pretty much works the same on Drupal Tutor. And you can see once you develop it a little bit, theme it up, you can have a pretty robust, nice looking site. All right, now we're going to start to diverge a bit. The core stuff was still kind of groupy. Now we're going to get into the first thing that we're not even going to talk about the word group. And that's selling premium content. I get asked to develop this all the time. I mean, who wouldn't want to, right? You're like, I just want to post things and have people pay me recurring revenue to like write things on the web. So everybody has that dream, and so I get asked that all the time. So premium content, what we're talking about, you have a website, it's probably got some free content, but then people pay a subscription, and that gives them access to this additional content. And so the typical approach to do this without organic groups is to create a role, something like subscriber role, use content access module or something like that. There's some similar modules to restrict the viewing of that premium content to only people who have the subscriber role. And then you sell access to that role, which you can do. There is a module commerce license role that does kind of what we just did, but it gives you the role instead of the organic group membership. Or you can do it manually, like somebody buys it, then you go in there and you check that box in their user account to give them the role. And that works well, actually, if you only have sort of two levels, like you have just free and premium, that's a totally reasonable way to do it. However, I have at least one client who has a lot of different information products that they sell. And so if you try to scale this up and say, oh, well, like imagine a scenario where you're selling business analysis reports for different industries. So people can buy the auto industry reports and the tech industry reports and the healthcare industry reports. Well, if you try to do it with the role approach, then you've got like at least 3 roles, like auto subscriber, tech subscriber, healthcare, and your permission screen gets like this. And so this one particular client had been doing that for a while, and it really is, it will not fit. I had to get an ultra widescreen monitor just so it could fit. It's like this big. So we're actually moving the stuff over to this to organic groups. So the permissions are in the user interface is a mess. There's also not a particularly easy way to say, oh, well, this is the automotive analyst. He's only supposed to write in the automotive field. This is the healthcare analyst. She's supposed to write in the healthcare field or whatever. There's no particularly built-in user interface for doing that. You could write something, but it's not simple. You may actually end up having to have another set of permissions. So every one of those subscriber things has both a subscriber and an editor. And so that's even longer than it's going to get. So another approach is to use organic groups. In this case, nobody's going to use the word group. They're never going to see the word group. They're not going to know they're in a group. They're not going to, nobody's going to know about groups. But what you will do behind the scenes is set up every content library, every package or whatever, as a group. You can create editors and admins for the group. That solves the problem of this person is only allowed to post automotive reports. This person does healthcare. Because they can be editors or admins at that level. And then you post your premium content to the groups like we've already seen. You sell access to the groups like we already saw a minute ago. And pretty much that would be enough if you just want to sell access to view on the website. If you want to do email notifications, as I said before, you could do message message notify, message digest. So I could even imagine a scenario where you would use organic groups. Maybe people never even read it on the website. Maybe they subscribe to daily email alerts within like a particular segment. You could run all that on the back end with organic groups. They could buy it online or whatever, and they'd be put in the group, but then they would never actually go to the group page at all. They would just get these sort of email notifications. Okay, another one I get asked to do a lot is editorial sections for the website. This person's allowed to edit these 15 pages and 5 menu items, and this person is allowed to do this other section. That is hell to build, especially the menu stuff, like giving people access to certain subs, trees, and stuff like that. It's not particularly easy. But organic groups can be used. So what you can do is create something called a section and give it the group, make it behave like a group. Then you can assign editors to that section, that group, using the interface we've already seen, and allow them to create pages. In this scenario, there would probably be no regular members. The only people who would ever be a member of the group would be these editors who are, because we're using it pretty much strictly for access control. And then if you need to do sort of a menu at that section level, there's a module called OG menu, which is Dennis's favorite module, to manage a menu at that level. So I'm going to skip through the first bit of this. The setup for the first bit is what we've already seen. I'm going to create a content type called section, create a couple of them like math department and English department, and assign a couple administrators to them. And when I get to the end, like I said, you can watch these in full if you want to see it step by step. But let's see. Yeah, when I get to the end, here's one of the editor's views. So this person can edit the English department, but they can't edit the math department page. So they can make any changes they want to this page, but not the math department. They can also add pages. In this case, I made basic page a group content type. So they can add pages to it. All right. And then, of course, they can manage this page. Now, one thing, when I go back to the English department, you'll notice there's no way to get from the English department page to that About Us, About the English department page. And that's where the organic groups menu comes in. So I'm going to show you the setup of that real quick. Organic groups menu is pretty easy to set up, especially if you want the default options. Turn on organic groups menu module. It also comes with a second module that allows you to set default links that get put into every menu by default. Okay, so these are the settings. You can set the main one is maybe maximum number of menus per group, and whether or not you want groups or menus to automatically be created every time you create a group. So I think we can skip ahead a little bit here. All right. And there is a block. In this case, I'm going to put my that organic groups menu on the sidebar. So I need to add that organic groups menu somewhere. I need to drag it everywhere and then put it on the sidebar. Now that'll switch. So that organic groups menu block, it's a single block, but it'll be smart enough to know which group that's currently being viewed. So you don't have to put like a separate block for each one. And because I created these groups before I installed the organic groups module, or sorry, OG menu module, I need to actually manually create the menus. That wouldn't happen if I'd installed it the other way around. Well, and I chose the automatically create menu option. So now that I have that, you'll see there's a block that popped in. It's empty right now because there are no menu links on the menu. But this person, because they are the admin of the English department, can now set those items. So they go here under the group menu. They can add a link. So they can add that about the English department link. And there it is. Shows up within their own sort of personal submenu. And they can add additional items. I think they just have them add a, let's see. Yeah, if they add a home item, and then they actually get this interface just like the regular menu where they can drag it around, reorder it. They can nest the items. It had the same features like the regular menu link, but only within this submenu. Okay, and depending on how you theme this, of course, I've got it on the sidebar. You know, you could potentially theme it so that it was up there at the top, like kind of a little sub line. All right, and so that's pretty good for the section editors. And I only have, well, I have about 5 minutes left, but I'm going to go a little bit into question time, and then you guys can come up here and ask me questions if you want, because this is where the real crazy stuff is what happens if we diverge away from nodes from as the group type and as some of the group content type. So I had this crazy idea. I'm really, really waiting for a right project to do it on, but I'm going to tell you about it right now. So imagine the scenario where you're building a social network or an intranet site. You've already got organic groups because you need actually the group functionality we've seen. But you've now been asked to implement a user follow feature. So like Twitter or something, so that people can track what users post in addition to the organic groups. So normally, people would tell you to use user relationships module. The user relationships module has user interface for doing exactly the follow system. So right out of the box, you can get some nice links. You can set up different relationship types, so give links so that people can follow people or whatever. It's got views support, so you can build like a view of like, here's the post from everyone you follow. So it works pretty well right out of the box. But there's some reasons you might consider not using it. First of all, it's a completely different system from organic groups, which in this scenario, I'm assuming you're already going to do organic groups because you need that functionality. So that's like two sets of configurations and databases and everything that you got to understand. It's also 2 of them that you have to keep up to date. And then what if you wanted to create an integrated stream of posts from people you follow and posts in groups that you're a member of? Like Facebook does that, right? So you've got sort of these 2 divergent systems. That's going to be hard. There are ways to do it, but it's not particularly easy. And the thing is, you already have a system in place that allows people to subscribe to entities, post by entities. It's called organic groups. So this is the typical use case for organic groups, but there's no reason that you couldn't do that and have the user themselves be a group. And then people could join that group in order to follow them, because then it would be just like anything else, or just like a normal group. Now, I'm not going to have time to show all of these. So this first video I'm going to skip entirely, because this is just setting up normal groups. We've already seen that. All right, and this one, let's see. I'm going to show the beginning, because this is where when you diverge from using the standard entity types, you can't just check that really nice box at the bottom that says group or group content. That only works with nodes. If you want to do other entity types, then you need to come into this other interface. This is the one we saw before for adding fields. So it's down under configuration, OG field settings. Now in this case, I'm going to go to the user, and I'm going to add the group field, which will allow me to turn them into a group. Okay, the user is now a group. The second thing I'm going to have to do, this goes a little fast, is I'm going to have to add a second group audience field to like articles or whatever I want to post, because each of the fields only allows you to post to one entity type. So if I want to be able to post articles to a group, I need to have a separate field if I want to be able to post them to users. You can actually have as many fields as you need, but but they have to be individual to that particular target entity type. And let's see. Oh, so then in my article, you can see I have those 2 group audience fields now. So in order to make it clearer for people who would be filling this out, I would rename them here to groups to post to, and the second one I would rename as user to post to. Now, if I were doing this for real, I would modify the form so that people wouldn't have to click their own name in order to post it as themselves. You can do that fairly simple with a form alter. All of these obscure entity types are going to require that you modify the user interface. None of them are going to work like right out of the box. But there is an advantage to having everything sort of architecturally the same in the back, so that work could be worth it. So here, this is Pete can come in and turn himself into a group using that group field. And now Pete's user profile page, and actually I think there's let's see here. I think I had to modify, I had to clean up the page. Where is it? Let me skip ahead to, this isn't the new video. Sorry, some of that stuff was supposed to be cut out. Let me zip ahead here. Okay, so here is, I think this is Bob again. And so when Bob looks at Pete's user profile page, he gets a request group membership. Now, of course, that should probably be renamed to follow Pete or friend Pete. And now I can friend Pete by sending him a group membership request. Pete can go through this process, or hopefully some new form that you create that's a lot easier than this, and approve that friend request or follow request. And let's see, if I go back, let's see. All right, so I can see this here, but I can't see Pete's posts for the same reason I couldn't see those group posts initially, because I need a view or something to show because it doesn't theme it. So I think even after I create this article by Pete, yeah, it's not going to show up. So I'm going to skip ahead because this is mainly just creating a view, which is exactly what I already showed, but for the user. And let's see. OK, what am I doing here? Oh, right, so this is somebody who isn't following Pete. And so they have that same, Pete is a private group. So they can't see, they can see their private post in their own private group, but they can't see Pete's. All right, and I'm going to jump right to the end because there's a bunch of view stuff here. What I do in this next segment, and you can watch it later if you want, is I build a combined view that shows me all of the posts by all of the users who are groups that I am a member of and all of the nodes that are groups that I'm a member of, so that I get this combined feed that ends up looking like, let's see, I think right here at the end, yeah, where, so this is somebody who's both a member of the test group and they're following Pete. And so they can get this into a single view because architecturally on the back end, it's all in the same tables, okay? And so you can do that with views. Now, that would need some work, obviously some UI work, but I think it's a pretty cool idea. A few other like crazy ideas that I have. I'm actually going to do this first one next month, I think. I mean, we'll see if it works. Create reusable forms using the entity form module. The entity form module, all of the submissions are entities. And then have those submissions be like linked to the relevant group that somebody is reusing that form in context of. Build a marketplace site. So a marketplace site is where you let other people set up a store in your system. I actually did this one. It was a wedding registry, but it, kind of the same thing. People go in, they set up their wedding page, and then they created commerce products through a custom user interface that were linked back with organic groups to the wedding page. And then you actually have to link the line items as well in order to, for accounting purposes. Reviews. Imagine what if the commerce product was the group, and every time somebody bought it, the user got added to the product as a group. Then you could do something like, if the purchasers are group members, then you have like verified purchasers who do the reviews of the product. That I think you can almost do right out of the box with rules and some things like that. Collaborative image galleries, sort of like Flickr, where you can share into image galleries. I think that's pretty straightforward. And taxonomy subscriptions, this would be similar to that user follow, where you would follow a taxonomy term, but you then use the same organic groups infrastructure. So yeah, organic groups, it's not just for groups. Can be useful anytime you want to link nodes in that sort of configuration that I showed before. If for non-node uses, you're going to have to write your own UI. It's got a relatively simple API for adding and removing items from the group. Use OG group and OG ungroup function. Never, never, never create OG membership entities directly unless you want them to randomly disappear. So views and rules support is built into organic groups, so you can use it for whatever crazy system you develop. And so that's all I have to say. I think there might be like 5 minutes to do questions, and then if there are more, you can ask me afterwards. Questions?
So we toyed with a lot of the ideas you're talking about for vertical projects, and one of the things that we're into is when you expose the member management to the standard vanilla user, they have a lot of trouble with that. You get drop downs and
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, in general, even if they're doing regular groups, it's sort of it's very abstract.
Is there any helper modules that sort of give you toggles or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. Usually, what I do is because you have those two functions, that OG group, OG ungroup. I usually just write my own, because most of what you're trying to do is either put something in the group, and because that will work for both content and users, the OG group and OG ungroup. So I usually write my own simple buttons or something that just on the back end call one of those two functions, because that's usually what you're trying to do. Yeah. Some of those things are also views. I think you may be able to override it as far as some of the links.
So I'm thinking for sports leagues and stuff like that. If I go in, I can self-assign myself to or join a basketball league or a flag football league. And I understand I probably have to log in to see content that's relevant to me. Can that also be tied to a cookie where if I come back anonymously, it looks at which groups I'm involved in? And
so I've actually done that before. Fake authentication to a group. I did that for another site. It was also related to weddings, but it was wedding photo sharing, for those photo booths that people have at weddings. And they wanted to be able to send a link to people that was authenticated, so not anybody could see it. But if I shared this particular link, then it would bypass the security and allow you to see it. So no, there's nothing out there that does it inherently, but it can be done, where somebody would bypass that and put someone in the group by. But I don't think there's anything out there exactly.
Okay.
Anything else?
There's some crazy ideas that you had at the end there.
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm trying number 1. I've already done number 2, and number 3 I think is actually the most promising of all of them. So the most realistic of all of them.
I got a question for you. On the commerce one, the marketplace, how did you handle payment?
So I actually did the commerce. I had both the commerce product and the commerce line item be organic group content, so that when somebody would, and then I had to write a lot of backend code for this. So there was a whole user interface. The user never saw the backend commerce stuff, but they would create their GIFs, and which would generate commerce products. When people would buy those GIFs, then it would sort of track what the line items related to them. And then the orders would get completed, and then I could do the accounting because I could look at the line items on completed orders and link it back to that, because those line items were associated with the wedding page, which was the group.
Okay.
So that's, but it was a lot. It was a lot of custom code.
Yeah.
In that particular case.
Time for one more quick question.
Actually, lunch is running just a little bit behind schedule, so we have time for probably a couple more quick questions.
Or not.
Or not.
Okay, thanks.